It was a dry afternoon in Phoenix, where the sun seemed to hang heavy in the sky. In a small apartment at the edge of town, 13-year-old Ryan sat by the window, staring blankly at the street below. Just months ago, he would have been outside with his friends, racing down the sidewalks in his custom wheelchair, feeling free in ways his legs no longer allowed. But after the crash, everything had changed. The accident had spared his life, but his wheelchair, the very thing that gave him independence, was left mangled beyond easy repair. The hospital did all they could, and the doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him after the crash. Yet when it came to his mobility, they shook their heads with regret. "The chair's too damaged," one said quietly to his mother, Claire. They suggested ordering a new one, a replacement that would cost more than Claire could ever dream of affording on her modest income. Each conversation with insurance ended the same way: long holds, apologies, and denials. The broken chair sat like a cruel reminder in the corner, its wheels bent and its motor lifeless. Claire was only 36, but the weight she carried in those weeks made her feel much older. She worked long shifts as a receptionist at a local clinic, stretching every paycheck to cover rent, food, and school supplies. But this was different. This was about Ryan's freedom, his chance to live like any other boy his age. Watching her son's spirit dimmed day by day broke her more than the financial struggle. Ryan, once cheerful and determined, now barely spoke, often whispering, "Maybe this is just my life now." She tried everything she could. She visited repair shops that specialized in bikes and scooters, but most mechanics shook their heads at the sight of the complex wheelchair. Others quoted prices so high it might as well have been impossible. Each failed attempt tightened the knot in her chest. Claire knew her son was losing hope, and with it his spark. She prayed for an answer, though she wasn't sure where it would come from. All she knew was that she couldn't give up, not while Ryan still needed her. One late afternoon, walking home after another exhausting shift, Claire noticed a small garage tucked between a diner and a laundromat. The sign above it was faded, and the lot was cluttered with old cars, bicycles, and spare parts stacked high. She had passed it many times, but never stopped, assuming it was just another auto shop. This time, something made her pause. A man in his mid-30s, Miguel, was outside, wiping grease from his hands as he closed the hood of an old pickup. There was something approachable about him, calm, steady, and unhurried. Summoning courage, she stepped closer and asked softly, "Excuse me, do you ever work on things that aren't cars?" Miguel looked at her with curiosity, his dark eyes kind but cautious. "Depends," he replied with a small smile. "What are we talking about?" With trembling hands, Claire described her son's broken wheelchair, explaining how no one else would touch it. She braced herself for another rejection, but instead Miguel nodded thoughtfully, scratching his chin. "Bring it by," he said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I'll try." The next day, Claire wheeled the chair into the garage, Ryan trailing behind her, his eyes downcast. Miguel crouched to inspect the frame, running his hands along the bent metal, testing the dead motor. Ryan watched quietly, not daring to hope. After a few minutes, Miguel looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's not impossible," he said firmly. "It'll take time, but this isn't done for." For the first time in weeks, Ryan felt a flicker of hope, though he hid it behind a skeptical glance. "Still," he whispered, "really?" Miguel only smiled. "Really?" From that moment, something shifted. Miguel began working on the chair after hours, staying late in his small garage, long after the sun had set. He studied diagrams, repurposed parts from old bikes, and tested small adjustments again and again. Each evening, Claire and Ryan would stop by, sometimes bringing sandwiches or coffee to thank him. Ryan often sat in silence, watching Miguel's steady hands, wondering why this stranger was willing to help when so many had turned them away. Slowly, his curiosity began to replace his despair. One evening, Ryan finally asked, "Why are you doing this for us?" Miguel paused, tightening a bolt before glancing at the boy. "Because everyone deserves a shot at moving forward," he said simply. That answer lingered in Ryan's mind long after he went to bed that night. For the first time since the crash, he thought maybe, just maybe, his life wasn't over. Claire, too, felt the heaviness on her shoulders ease, watching her son's eyes light up again in Miguel's garage. The day finally came when Miguel called Claire and Ryan into the garage with a hopeful grin. The wheelchair sat in the center, gleaming under the dim lights. Its frame was straightened, the wheels aligned, and the motor humming softly. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen it whole in months. Miguel gestured for him to try it. With trembling hands, Ryan lowered himself into the chair. For a moment there was silence, and then movement. Smooth, steady, alive again. His laughter burst out like sunlight, echoing off the concrete walls. Claire covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she watched her son glide across the garage. The joy on Ryan's face was something she thought she might never see again. Miguel leaned against his workbench, quietly satisfied, though his smile revealed his pride. "It's not perfect," he said softly, "but it'll carry you." Ryan spun in a small circle, testing the chair, and then stopped in front of Miguel. "You didn't just fix it," he whispered. "You fixed me." Miguel's heart clenched at the boy's words. News of Miguel's work spread quickly through the small town. A neighbor who had seen Ryan rolling happily down the street shared the story at church. And soon, people began stopping by Miguel's garage with their own broken wheelchairs, scooters, or walkers. At first, he was overwhelmed, unsure if he could keep up with the demand. But when he looked at Ryan stronger each day, his doubts faded. He realized this was more than repairing machines. It was about restoring dignity, one person at a time. The garage became a place of hope. For Ryan, the transformation was just beginning. Back at school, he no longer felt trapped by pity. His friends welcomed him back into games, races, and lunchtime laughter. Teachers noticed the change in his confidence, and his grades began to climb again. At night, he would talk excitedly with his mother about dreams of becoming an engineer one day, someone who could design chairs even better than the one Miguel fixed. Claire listened with pride, her heart swelling each time Ryan's eyes sparkled with possibility. The darkness of the crash seemed further behind them now. Claire often found herself reflecting on how fate had led them to that small garage between the diner and the laundromat. Miguel never asked for payment beyond the cost of parts, brushing off her attempts to offer more. "I didn't do it for money," he always said. His humility astonished her. She had spent months pleading with insurance companies and specialists, only to be met with cold indifference. Yet here was a man with grease on his hands, and barely enough to keep his shop afloat, giving her son more than any doctor or bureaucrat ever had. One evening, she invited Miguel over for dinner. He hesitated at first, uncomfortable with the attention, but Ryan insisted. "You're family now," the boy declared, and Miguel finally agreed. They sat at Claire's modest table, sharing laughter and stories late into the night. For the first time in years, Claire felt the presence of something she hadn't known she missed, a sense of partnership, of not carrying every burden alone. She saw in Miguel not just a mechanic, but a man with a heart wide enough to change lives. As the weeks passed, the bond between them deepened. Ryan often visited the garage after school, eager to learn. Miguel taught him how to use tools, how to listen to the sound of a motor, how patience often solved more than force. Each lesson built Ryan's confidence, showing him he wasn't defined by what he couldn't do, but by what he could learn. Miguel never treated him as fragile, only as capable. It was a gift Ryan didn't even know he craved, and it shaped the way he saw himself from then on. Claire sometimes stood in the doorway, watching the two of them work side by side, her heart swelling with gratitude. She thought of the doctors who had given up, the insurance letters filled with rejection, and the countless nights she cried alone, thinking hope was gone. Then she looked at Miguel, guiding her son with patience and care, and she realized miracles didn't always come in the form of grand gestures. Sometimes they arrived quietly in a small garage, through the hands of a man who believed in fixing more than machines. The night Ryan first wheeled himself independently through the park, Claire sat on a bench, overwhelmed. The city lights glowed in the distance, and she could hear his laughter carrying through the cool air. Miguel walked beside her, quiet as always. She turned to him and said, "You didn't just give my son back his freedom, you gave me back hope." Miguel looked down, brushing off the compliment, but his eyes betrayed the emotion he tried to hide. In that moment, she knew their lives were forever intertwined, not by obligation, but by kindness.